Hi, so welcome to our webinar on how to apply for pupillage at 39. I'm just waiting for all the speakers to find find our room, find the Zoom. I think we're all coming on quite quickly. I'll just introduce myself while they're doing that. So I'm Lindsay, I'm the CEO at 39. I was a solicitor way back when. I was a shipping litigator. I'm delighted to now be at 39 Essex Chambers, where I've been for about 5 years. We're very grateful to you all for joining us. Thank you very much. I know that you're in the middle of this hideous pupillage gateway process, and many of you will be, filling in your application forms. I don't know how many of you have already filled it in, or whether, like me, you probably leave everything to the last minute and it'll be just before the closing date on the 8th of February. But we thought this was the optimum time to let you know a bit about us. We're very sad that you're not here in person, having our tea, coffee, wide variety of retro chocolate biscuits. I'm sure you'll see us drinking our tea and coffee as we're going through. And so sorry you're not here in person, but one of the great silver linings about COVID was that we all now are very familiar with Zoom and webinars, and we can let you into 39 a bit by webinar, and hopefully therefore get to more of you and fit more in. So this is your sort of 2 hours. 2 hours does seem a very long time, but I think it's going to go quite quickly. We hope that we are going to cover things that are of interest to you. You will get more out of it if you ask us questions. We will answer those questions all the way through, so do ask us questions on the Q&A button. I will be looking at that all the way through, and we will be answering those questions. There's obviously a question space at the end, which we may or may not need, but if you can just keep putting those questions up, we will try and answer them all the way through. So we want you to get a better feeling of us. We want you to have an understanding of who 39 Essex Chambers is, who we are, what we offer, whether you might want to apply to us. I'm going to ask each of the speakers to introduce themselves. I'm going to ask them to tell you what their journey to the bar was, or journey to their barrister's chambers, and what practice areas they practice in, and maybe if they can, and there's enough time, something that's very interesting about them. And I'm doing that because you're not getting the coffee and the tea and the biscuits and the networking, and that's the kind of conversations you have around that. So I'm trying to introduce that into the webinar. So just please do use the Q&A button, because you'll get more out of it. Oh, I see we've got one question already. Excellent, thank you very much. And otherwise, we're going to start straight away. So 39 Essex, practice areas, culture and ethos. So that's going to be me again. And Shaman Kapoor, who is on our management board and is a trained pupil supervisor, although he hasn't trained, you haven't done any pupil supervising since you've been at 39, have you, Shaman? We need to change that.
Thanks, Lindsay. You're not meant to spot flaws in profiles, but yes, thank you very much. Not yet.
Yeah, we're going to get you on that straight away. Okay, so what I just wanted to talk about was our sort of huge diversity of practice. There are lots of pluses and minuses to having such a diverse practice area, and it will come out a lot in what everyone says, but there aren't very many. There's a handful of barristers' chambers who have as wide areas of practice as we do, and it's sort of almost simpler to tell you what we don't do, which is we don't do blood and guts crime, and we don't do family work except for court of protection where it covers court of protection, and pretty much everything else we cover in some shape or form, and we work domestically and internationally. And all of our areas of practice are really, really important to us, and as important as each other. And that really feeds into what our ethos is, and our main ethos is that all our areas are important to us and all our people are important to us. And by people, I mean the people that work with us, the members and the staff, our clients, our lay clients, all of our stakeholders, everyone that we come into contact with. And we try and demonstrate that through inclusivity, transparency, very open communication, and by treating everybody with dignity and respect, as you would expect. So those are, those are our key values, and that is our key ethos. And we try and make decisions against that, and we try and demonstrate that in everything that we do, both sort of professionally as our barristers and in the way we treat people. Shaman, you were going to tell us some more other interesting statistics, just as a sort of to whet your appetite. You get all of these on the website.
I'll get to numbers. Obviously, you all love numbers and get to stats. Can I just flip the last bit on its head a little bit? Because the flip side of the question to Chambers about practice areas and diversity of practice areas is often what pupils and intending pupils get asked, which is, well, what do you want to specialise in? And I, for myself anyway, Lindsay, I used to hate that question because I love the skill set of the profession, perhaps more than some of the areas. And I like the ability to adapt that skill set to different areas. And of course, I think as time goes on, specialty becomes inevitable after years in practice. And some young practitioners have a very clear desire for specialty from the start. But I would really wish to emphasize to everyone that's watching that my impression of 39, both from outside 39 and now being in 39, as I have been for the last 3 years, is that rather it being a jack of all trades, as some might throw, but actually master of all is what I would like to emphasize. We are regularly and repeatedly against specialist sets. And if I can say this with a lot of gusto, we don't play second fiddle to anyone. And some of our key lateral hires have come from specialist sets who have admired the diversity of our practice and our people at 39. So enough of that. Let me tell you about some figures. Chambers and Partners, being one of the directories that loves to rank barristers individually, as practice groups, and then as chambers, has got our chambers ranked in as many as 20 different areas of practice. And that is not just our chambers, but those are individuals. And in most of those categories, in fact, I think in all of those categories, several of our members in each. We have in total about 189 members, of whom 52 are in silk. We have 7 academic assistants, currently 47 staff, 3 pupils taken on per annum. We have 20 full-time arbitrators, and we have many, many more that do arbitration part-time. So that's us and how we look in numbers. Back to you, Lindsay.
Thank you. And so we've already had a question, which is what makes 39 unique? And I hate questions like that, but thank you for answering questions. So please do keep coming with the questions. And I think it is that all of the areas that we practice in, I don't think anyone practices in quite the number or the type of areas that we practice in, that we service all of those areas equally, that we have international offices, and that as a commercial set, and we are a commercial set, we offer our pupils in the Second Six advocacy experience. So when you add all of that together, I think that makes us truly unique. So answer to that. Our international work is very important to us, and no one else, I think, is going to talk about this. So I'm just going to mention that we do have chambers in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur. We have a CEO in Singapore and an administrative assistant and 6 full-time barristers out there, and then barristers, traveling out all the time, backwards and forwards. And I think that is quite unusual. There are some other sets who have international chambers, but I don't think they're as well established as we are. And we get a lot of work out in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, India, Pacific, some in the Caribbean, more and more coming out of Africa. And so, yeah, truly quite global. Right, so we've pretty much sticking to time. Thank you very much, Shaman. And we're going to go straight to what it is like to be a pupil at 39 Essex Chambers. And we are very lucky to have all 3 pupils with us. I think they're going to be dipping in and out a little bit because they've got some other things that they've got to do. But thank you very much to Daniel, Celia and Ella. And over to you as what is life as a pupil like? Can I remind you to tell us a little bit about yourself, what your route to the bar was, because Shaman forgot, and one interesting fact about yourself.
Introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Celia. My route to the bar was I did an undergrad in law, and then I completed a master's. And during that master's, I applied to 39 Essex for pupillage. And then afterwards, I did the bar course. And a interesting fact about myself is difficult to give in a situation like this, but I suppose I can sort of say that I have a variety of interests, which are somewhat interesting. That I play tag rugby, I'm quite into film, I'm avid cook. So I suppose that's me.
Her film recommendations are on point every time.
Thanks, Ella.
I'm Ella. Hi. My route to the bar was also straight through academia, but I didn't start in law. I did an undergraduate degree in human sciences. I then did a law conversion course and an LLM in international law. During my LLM, I applied for the bar, applied for pupillage, and was very lucky to be offered a pupillage at 39 Essex. I did my bar course at the Inns of Court College of Advocacy, and now I'm here. Fun fact, my favorite new fun fact about myself is that over the Christmas holidays, I learned how to pickle things, and I'm very excited about it. That's my new fact. Daniel?
Hi, I'm Daniel. I came into the bar through academia as well. I did a LLB at Queen Mary, and then I did a LLM in human rights law, and then the LLM in bar practice, and then I got an offer at 39 Essex. In between that, I did a bit of work in care and doing disability rights work. My interesting fact is I play wheelchair football, and I like going to the gym.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So tell us all about what it's like to be a pupil at 39 Essex then.
So I'm going to start and I'll explain a little bit about the structure of pupillage and then I'll hand over to my colleagues. So the pupillage at 39 Essex is a standard 12-month pupillage, during which time you have 4 seats. Each seat is 2 months long and 3 months long, I can't do maths, and you rotate between each of the different core practice areas of Chambers. So those 4 key practice areas are the civil liabilities group, which translates roughly into personal injury and clinical negligence law, commercial and construction law, planning, property and environmental law, and public law. So you each start in a different seat and you rotate around each of those practice areas. In each practice area, you have 2, 3 or 4 supervisors, and by and large, you shadow them on the work that they are doing at the time in that practice area. That's generally made up of 2 broadly different types of work. You are either doing live work, which means that you're shadowing your supervisors on work that they are actually doing at the actual time, or you're doing dead work, I suppose, which is not a case that is live, not a case that is running, but a case that is given to you more as a training exercise to see how you would have coped with that kind of a case. The advantage of dead work is obviously that you can try your hand at something in a very safe way and receive very constructive feedback on that without worrying that you've detrimentally impacted somebody's case. The live work, you get into a little bit, well, at least my experience has been, I've been given more and more live work as I've progressed. The brilliant thing about live work is obviously that you can see the case go. You might start off with the case papers, you draft an advice, then you might have a conference with the client and you watch the case progress. Within live work, sometimes you'll be doing work in parallel to your supervisor. So they are also doing the relevant piece of work and they've just given it to you as an exercise to see how you would have tackled it had it been your case. But sometimes, and again, increasingly as you go on in pupillage, you get given work that really is your work to do. So particularly if your supervisor has a very complex case with lots of different discrete areas, you might be asked to take one particular bit of that case and do it for your supervisor. Obviously, they will check everything. Nothing that you do will just be sent straight out to a client. But you do get to try your hand at real cases, real work, and see the work that you do be used by your supervisor, which is a lot of fun, if very nerve-wracking. The other thing to say is that sometimes you can be asked to do discrete research tasks. So your supervisor might have a particular bit of case law that needs looking up, or a particular rule that they need you to find. And those will be discrete tasks that you get given. Almost all the work that you do is for your supervisors. Very, very, very occasionally, and not in your first six normally, might get given. Sorry, that might be a sorry. You might get somebody asking you to do some work that is not for your direct supervisor. That will always be run through your supervisors. So you're never going to be given an onslaught of work by other members of Chambers. They're very conscious of your workload. That is more or less everything that I wanted to say. The final thing I would say is that the real advantage of the system that we have at 39 is that you do get to see the really broad range of work that Chambers undertakes. You get to see not only the different practice areas as a whole, but even within each practice area, how different the work can be. And aside from that substantive variation, you also get to see how different supervisors work, how they approach the content of their cases and how they draft advice, what their advocacy is like, and how they handle their workload in and of itself, which is, at least I found, extremely valuable in seeing what kind of work you might want to do, but also how you are going to approach it. Those are all the things I wanted to say, so I'll hand over to Celia.
Sure. So I'm going to discuss training. Echoing everything Ella said as well, that it's absolutely unique and really helpful to be able to see such a broad area of practice during your pupillage. So essentially what will happen is, as Ella said, you undertake a variety of live and dead work throughout your pupillage. And as you do so, your supervisors are essentially making notes and providing feedback on sort of an informal basis. And then at the halfway point during your seat, you'll be provided with some written feedback. And that's sort of part of your training, because it's giving you, better clues and ideas as to what areas you need to work on and which areas you're doing well in. And so that's been mainly my experience during my first six. And then at the end, you have an end of seat feedback, which again is identifying the areas that you should work on. As we are moving now closer to second six, we're getting sort of ramped up and ready to be on our feet. It's really important at 39 Essex that pupils get experience in oral advocacy themselves during the second six, and getting a grip of your own cases and being responsible for your own work, which is obviously a really key part of practice. So I'm definitely quite grateful that we get to be on our feet during our second six, which again is another aspect that makes our pupillage unique. So leading up to second six, there's a lot of emphasis on training and getting to see the type of work that we'll expect both during our second six and the early years of our practice. So that involves going out to courts with different members of Chambers, not just your pupillage supervisors, and sort of seeing, the types of work you should expect to receive. Additionally, then there are formal and informal training sessions. So some of the informal training sessions might be just during your work with your supervisors if they want to explain a particular point of law to you. And then there are formal training sessions sort of about the practical realities of law, managing your accounts, and then also particular types of advocacy that you'll be expected to give. And then throughout as well, we can expect, at least coming up, that there will be shadow panel assessments, which are assessments given from other members of Chambers that aren't our supervisors. And again, that's feedback that's being provided. And then once we start our second six, there's a whole network of people who are there to provide support and help with any questions that we have, which makes it really helpful.
I might add one thing, if
Sure.
it's okay. Something that really appealed to me about 39 when I was applying was the emphasis that I heard current and past pupils put on the level of transparency that goes on in the assessments. You're never left in the dark as to where you're at and how you're doing. The assessments are really clear. Your supervisors tell you at every stage how you are doing. So you don't have this horrible thing that I hear from some other people at others sets necessarily, or in the past, where you get to the end of your seat and you've got no idea how you've done and no idea what people think about you. You will know at every stage how you are doing and what you need to do to improve, which is A, incredibly reassuring, but B, actually allows you to improve because you know exactly what it is that you have to be doing. I think that's incredibly helpful and important.
Yeah, agreed. So
someone's just
Daniel,
asked us, yeah, just before we go to you, Daniel, someone's just asked us if we could remind them what the 4 seats are. So what the 4 seats are that you cover, because I think, yeah, they could just have a reminder.
So they're a public law, civil liability, which, as Ella said, kind of includes personal injury and clinical negligence. Then the 3rd seat is commercial and construction law. And then the 4th seat is planning and environmental and property. And just to clarify, during pupillage, we essentially rotate between our seats, and the supervisors are set for each of those individual seats as well.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Daniel, what are you going to, what are you going to cover?
I'm covering communication, culture, working hours, and with support available to people. But before I do that, I wanted to say, you know, being a people at 39 is, you know, it's a lot of fun because we all got introduced to each other quite early on. We all met before we started, and we've been communicating on WhatsApp for quite a long time. So by the time we actually started as pupils, we already knew.
And that's something that we really try and encourage. So we try and make sure, we can't make you all get on with each other, but we try and we invite all our pupils, you know, when we know that they're going to come and join us for pupillage. So as soon as we've invited somebody to become a pupil and they've accepted, you become part of our family, and then we start handing you with invitations to Christmas parties and things, and asking you to come to drinks, things, and, you know, anything CPD orientated, or, you know, that you might be interested in. And it definitely worked with the 3 of you, I think.
Yeah, because we're not competing against each other. We know if we meet a standard of a 36 tenant, we will get an offer. It means that there isn't any pressure in a group of people, so we can focus on supporting each other and not fitting with the general support available at 39. All the supervisors are open to communication with you, and you can talk to them if you're having issues or problems, or if you're concerned about a certain piece of work, you can talk it through with them. And everyone seems to have a reasonably open door policy where people are always happy to help you, and like certain people in Chambers are trying to be able to support you in a pastoral way. And Chambers really wants to take care of you, and we implement a strict 9 to 6 working hour policy where you will be kicked out of Chambers around 6 o'clock, so you can focus on your own well-being and your own interest away from Chambers. Being a people isn't easy. It's supposed to be a challenging experience, and it's important that you have other interests away from work that help you focus when you are working in Chambers.
Thank you, Daniel. Very helpful. And we, all the pupils get mentors both in the clerk's room, which is quite important, and barrister mentors. And Chris, who's joined us here. Chris, give us a wave. Chris is the person in the clerk's room who looks after all the pupils all the time. So he's our key person. There are lots of key people, but he's our key pupil person, PP. Somebody wanted to have a reminder of the statistics. I'm just going to very quickly say that I think we've got about 190 barristers. Of those, some of them are only arbitrators. We've got about 20 people who only arbitrate, and then we have other people who do, you know, counsel work and arbitration work. I don't know what other stats you gave, Shaman. I should have been listening more carefully, but those were it. And I just will say that, you know, of all of those members, we've got quite a lot of members who are, as well as arbitrators who are academics. We've got 7 academic members, so you'll find them as professors. They may be even professors in your own universities. We have deputy high court judges, recorders, you know, lots of ex-Treasury Devil, ex-Master of the Rolls, ex-Supreme Court justices, you know, Lord Chief Justices, you know, of, you know, various other countries. So, you know, quite a good mix of people from a good mix of countries, and barristers based all over the world. So I can't remember what other stats. Another stat that might be interesting to you, and I don't have the exact figure, and somebody will put me right in their chat if I've got this wrong, is that in the last, I think, 10 years, over 90% of our pupils have been offered tenancies. And I think in this webinar, that's quite an important statistic to hold on to. So thank you very much. A lot of the people who are presenting today have been pupils at 39. So we'll be able to flesh out some of the experiences that our current pupils have, because obviously they only started in September. And obviously in this application process at the moment, so if you're filling your application in now, that is for to be offered a pupillage in September 2024. Yeah, so that's the time frame that we're looking at, which is an answer to one of the other questions that we had. So going straight on, Rachel and Dan, you're going to talk to us about life as junior members at 39 Essex. Rachel was a pupil here, Dan was not a pupil here, so we'll have quite a balanced view, I think. So thank you very much. Do remember to tell us how you got here, something interesting about yourself, and what practice areas you practice in. Thank you.
Dan hasn't unmuted yet, so
sorry.
So you're going first then, Rachel.
I know, I was waiting for him to unmute so I could say, oh, I'll go after you, but
but no, it's like when you play chicken, you know, with cars. Zoom chicken.
My name's Rachel. I did pupillage at 39. I did pupillage in 2016-17. I was called to the bar the year before that. Dan and Ira, I think, at bar school together. Did we? Yeah, at bar school together. So we are exact contemporaries. I do mostly public law. I do a bit of planning as well, and a bit of construction or construction adjacent work, particularly about fire, because I've been working on the Grenfell Tower inquiry for the last 5 years. So I know a fair bit now about fire safety standards. Dan? Oh, interesting fact. I don't have any interesting facts.
Rubbish.
You're about to get married.
I'm about to get married. There we go.
Just come back from Morocco.
I've just come back from Morocco. I've been on a camel recently and I didn't fall off, which was quite an achievement for me. My route to the bar was I did an English degree. Then I did a master's. I was about to start a PhD. Unfortunately, woke up one day just in the nick of time and decided that was not what I wanted to do with my life. So decided to do the law conversion. I worked part-time whilst I was doing that. So I worked in academic publishing. And then I did a year working for the Free Representation Unit, which I suspect some of you probably have heard of as an employment legal officer there before I started pupillage. Dan.
Thanks, Rachel. My name's Dan. I was called to the bar in 2015, and as Rachel said, we are exact contemporaries. I did pupillage at a different chambers and have been at 39 Essex now for about 3 years, just coming up to. So I joined when I was still relatively junior. I predominantly specialise in civil liability, so personal injury and clinical negligence. And I also do some public law work as well, in particular inquests and inquiries. I didn't do a law degree. I did a music degree before I came to the bar. And thereafter, I did the law conversion and bar school before coming to do pupillage at Temple Garden Chambers, which does civil and public law. So quite similar to what I specialise in now. The interesting fact about me is that I funded my legal studies by being a professional musician. So if you Google my name, my discography will come up, including hits on the Harry Potter soundtrack, amongst others. So Why don't I kick off then about what life is like as a new tenant at 39? Now, of course, my experience of being a new tenant wasn't quite the same probably as if you're coming straight off the back of pupillage, but I was really struck when I arrived at a similar level as to the openness and the support network that was provided to me. And that's something that we hear from our new joiners, both coming out of pupillage and also joining across the board as lateral hires. And what does that mean? Well, in practice, what that means is that you don't finish pupillage and have the rug pulled out from under you. So your pupil supervisors become your first points of call. And that is really helpful because it makes you realize that actually this isn't a case of, right, well, you know, my hand has now stopped being held and this is the end of it. It makes you realize that actually the open door policy at 39 Essex is a genuine open door policy where you really can pop in and ask senior people at all levels the most embarrassing questions as well as some of the most sophisticated. And I've certainly found that there is no shortage of people who are willing to take the time to talk to you, to welcome you into their rooms, to sit you down and to talk through some of the difficult problems you have. And the great thing about being a tenant is that you can ask the stupidest questions and they don't judge you at that point. So it's also a really good opportunity for you to meet other members of Chambers. And of course, the first part of that coming out of pupillage is that your supervisors stay there as a point of direct contact for you. So I think that's my primary takeaway. Rachel, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add at this stage.
No, completely agree. The other things that we have in place as you come out of pupillage and into the sort of wilds of being a new tenant and suddenly feeling quite scary and you're now responsible for your cases is that we have a mentoring programme. So you're signed up with a mentor, normally somebody who's a fairly junior, so they're not too terrifying. And they will just, meet you a couple of times, a term or a couple of times a year. It's sort of between you, the two of you, how often you meet up, and just sort of check and help as well with not just the kind of legal side of stuff where you can always just drop in other rooms, ask people in the relevant practice area, but also help you with the kind of pastoral side of learning to manage a practice. It's not intuitive. It's very easy to say yes to everything and suddenly find that you haven't got any time. And I think at 39, something I really realised was that people are really looking out for you with that. I'm very much one of those people who will try and say yes to everything because I'm a bit of a people pleaser. But there are a lot of people at a lot of different levels of seniority who kind of had my back and were keeping an eye out for me and making sure that I didn't, overburden myself and then burn out. And that's, if you are like me and prone to that sort of thing, that's a massive benefit. And it just makes you feel very welcome and very much part of 39 and part of everything that's going on right from the beginning.
I think another point on that is that actually one of the most wonderful and exciting things about 39 is the diversity of work and therefore of opportunities that you can get stuck into from a really early stage in tenancy. And that doesn't just feed into the types of work that you're doing in terms of specialisms, it also feeds into the types of work you're doing in terms of led or unled, advocacy versus advisory. And so what 39 has, which in my view sets it apart, is that really from the time that you hit the ground, you are able to do a really nice mixture of a huge different number of types of work as well as specialisms. And actually, Rachel's hit on a really good point, which is that in a way, having that potpourri, having the number of options available to you makes it really exciting, but also makes it quite overwhelming sometimes because you think, gosh, but I really quite enjoyed planning and I'd also really like to do loads more public law. And while I'm at it, why don't I do some court of protection and a counter schedule in a multi-track personal injury claim? And when you're doing all of that, it's brilliant and it makes you into an absolutely fantastic barrister and everyone should do that. And it's also really important that the clerks support you and encourage you to explore as many different areas and make sure that you don't over specialize too soon. But the corollary to that is that it's a huge amount of work or of perhaps deadlines or perhaps drains on your time. And what that means is that it's also really nice that there are people both in the clerk's room, but also your mentors who are able to help you manage that, to help you develop in those first few months the skills of managing a practice, as Rachel says. And although the clerking teams are split into the 4, which correspond to the seats that you've already heard of, there's a huge amount of overlap, there's a huge amount of communication. And what that means is that you will find that you walk into a clerk's room which really does have your back, which really doesn't want you to burn out, which has your well-being at heart, but also wants to provide you with as many brilliant opportunities as the clerks can, and also give you the opportunity to kind of have your finger in as many pies as you want to. And so for me, one of the key attractions of 39 is that you really can do everything for as long or as little as you want. And we really encourage our junior tenants also to do a lot of advocacy in their first few years on their feet, because ultimately that's such a key point.
On that, and I'm going to ask Rachel this one because I don't want to, but just give us a flavour, Rachel, of the kind of advocacy you did in your second 6. If you can remember that far back.
So many years ago. So a lot of the advocacy when you're sort of starting out your first case.
Maybe Jake can jump in on this as well, because Jake, you maybe done it slightly more recently. Sorry.
A lot of it was, you start with kind of small claims and fast track personal injury stuff or contractual disputes in the county court, which is really good, just advocacy practice, getting you up on your feet. And at the time, I think Can
you remember the first one you did?
Yes, I think I was probably better prepared for that than I've been for any subsequent case, which is probably not something I should say on something that's being recorded. But I spent about a day and a half preparing for what turned out to be about a 20-minute long hearing about who hit who on a roundabout. But I won, so it was obviously.
So what was it about? Who hit who on a roundabout?
Who hit who on a roundabout?
Right. And you won. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it was an RTA.
It was indeed an RTA, and I think And
you were acting for the insurer?
Almost certainly. I think I've acted for the claimant in an RTA maybe once. And then you also do sort of infant approvals, so settlements which need the approval of the court. I did some submissions on costs when I went to pick up judgment in a planning related matter, which was quite intimidating because that was quite a lot grander than anything I'd done up to that point. But the Silk, who I was picking up judgment for, was very helpful and was on hand, basically told me what to say and let me go and say it. So that was a great experience. I think either in second 6 or just at the very start of tenancy as well, I started having applications in the High Court for extensions of time in regulatory matters. So you can, regulators, the Health and Care Professions Council seems to be one that often encounters this issue. They can extend a suspension of a regulated professional for a certain amount of time, but after they hit a statutory backstop, they then need court approval to do it further. So you get sent along to go and ask politely for more time so they can finish investigating. Jake, does that sound about right? As a sort of mix of...
Yeah, I think that basically covers it. Hello, everyone. I'm Jake. I'll save my introduction for later, but Lindsay's reeled me in early. I got very lucky during my second 6 and ended up being a junior to a Silk in Chambers on a pretty interesting case about an injured racehorse, where we spent about 3 days looking at scans of a racehorse's tendons. So I became very well versed on how you look at x-rays of horses' tendons. So that was great. So
3 days.
Yeah, it was a great 3 days.
And sometimes you can appear in front of other members of Chambers, right, Jake?
You can, yeah. As Deputy District Judge Kapoor once had the pleasure of hearing my advocacy. We won't discuss the outcome, but... Or
Shaman, we could also talk about the time when it was Kapoor versus Kapoor. So we had Vivek Kapoor and Shaman Kapoor against each other in court. Right. Jake, can you remember your the first thing that you were asked to do on your feet as in your second 6?
Yeah, it was a credit hire case, so a sort of car insurance case, and like Rachel, I prepped for about 3 days for a half an hour hearing.
Where were you? Which court? Can you remember?
It was online. I think it was Willesden County
COVID.
Court.
Yeah.
Willesden County Court. And I got there, and the witness didn't speak English, but hadn't translated their witness statement. So clearly hadn't written their witness statement. And I remember sending frantic messages to my supervisors asking what I should do. So that was a good experience all round.
One of the really nice things as you go into your second six at 39 is that there's a kind of fairly well established program of training, which is partly delivered by supervisors, but partly also by pupils in, former pupils in the years just gone, where you get sort of informal practice. And there's a WhatsApp group going around for any questions that you might have, when you suddenly panic and think, how do I actually introduce a witness statement? Do I need to take this evidence on oath? Does anybody know what parts of the CPR apply in small claims track and things like that? And that's a really useful resource. I'm in, I think, the most recent recension of that group. And to be honest, some of the questions that the pupils ask in second six, I do not know the answer to, and I have to go look up.
Yeah, no, it's extremely helpful. I remember there was a point where that group was on my top of my most contacted in WhatsApp, so above my mum, and I thought, oh no. Luckily, it's dropped down now.
I'm going to ask you some more questions, and I know this is a bit unfair because you're not meant to be on until how to apply, but on the basis that you, I think, are our most junior member can you just give us a feel of can you just tell us what call you are? So, how many years you've been practicing for, and I know that doesn't quite meet with your call, so that might be quite interesting for you to tell us, and then just give us a sort of a week in the life of, so just very quickly, the kind of cases that you've done in, like, let's say the last week. Not this week, because we're only on Wednesday, but the last, and not the last week actually, because that was only where courts weren't open, were they? So maybe give us a week in December or something, just as a very quick, a feel for what being a junior member is like, what kind of work you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm 2020 call, so I was called in the middle of the pandemic over Zoom, which was a bit sad. And I think what you're talking about is straight after I did my pupillage, I went off and I was a judicial assistant at the Supreme Court to Lord Sales and Lady Rose, which was an amazing year, seeing behind the scenes of the Supreme Court, learning from the judges. And actually a point to make is that actually we have about 3 or 4 people in the last few years who've done that. And what I think is nice about that is it shows that Chambers is really encouraging of people going off and having these experiences. So that was great. So I only got back to practice about 4 months ago, so still very much working it all out. But a typical week is, sometimes I have to sort of pinch myself just because the variety is just unbelievable. One day I'll be doing something, a court of protection case about someone who needs to move that care home. And then the next day I'm doing something to do with a Premier League club and regulatory, something along those lines. So, from day to day, you're kind of doing gymnastics between completely different practice areas, which I find is really exciting, and it really is never boring. So far so good. And
are you going back into court now? So I know that I haven't seen this as a question, but I have been asked it a lot. Is that in COVID, obviously everything pretty much went remotely. Other than actually court of protection, quite a lot of the court of protection stuff still happens in person, didn't it? But a lot of our work across all of our practice areas became remote, and we got very used to Zooms, and there's all sorts of funny stories about that. But are you now going back into court? How's that working?
Yeah, I'd say 75%. So alongside bigger cases. We all do sort of smaller matters, sort of smaller civil liability cases. And I'd say about 75% of those are now back in person, with some stuff still online. It seems to depend on the court. I personally prefer being in court. I think it helps me sort of get G'd up for the thing a bit more. So I'm very happy, even if that's going to Slough County Court, as I did last week.
Furthest away court you've been to?
You know, I've not actually, I don't want to sort of advertise this too much in case any clerks are listening and want to send me to
Darcy, listen in.
Middlesbrough. But I actually haven't been sent that far. I think Bristol is maybe the furthest, which is almost well, actually, I'm not going to say I'm sad about that, because
we were looking for someone for Haverford West on the 23rd of December, so I don't know why you didn't get that one.
I think I was in Slough. I think I was in Slough.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. Just Emily and Colin, before I forget, I know we're not coming to you next, but when we do come to you, could you just talk about how the pupillage is assessed as well? Could you put that in? Because I don't think we've covered that, and that might be quite interesting to, just have that covered. So, well, thank you very much on life as a junior member and second six. One last question from me, and that is, Rachel and Dan, what kind of, just very quickly, what kind of percentage work is in your own right and what is being led? Or can you not answer that? Is it too difficult?
I think for me, it's probably about 50-50. I'm doing quite a lot of, I was instructed on Grenfell as well on the inquiry. So that's obviously a led case. I've been instructed on a number of large clinical negligence and personal injury cases, which are led. And then I would say about 50 or maybe just over 50% of my work is work that I do in my own right. So it's a very nice balance from my perspective.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Rachel, similar?
Yeah, I think probably fairly similar. The lead cases I'm doing take up so much headspace when I'm doing them that it feels like
you forget.
Thinking about it. It probably is about 60-40, 50-50, that kind of region.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you very much. So we're going to go swiftly on to how second six and early years are managed. And so we've got Sheraton and Darcy. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm not sure which way round. Give us a bit of a potted history.
Hello everyone, my name is Sheraton Doyle. I'm one of the senior practice managers in the public law team, and I've actually been clerking in Chambers for a whopping 23 years in October. So I think it's safe to say that I can vouch for the fact that it's a jolly nice place to work. Otherwise I wouldn't have lasted all those years here. I'm presenting, as Lindsay said, with Darcy. Darcy sits in the commercial construction team. She's one of the practice managers there, and she's recently rejoined us, so we're delighted about that. But I'll pass you over to Darcy now, because she's going to talk to us about how the second six is managed and those first opportunities to get into court.
Thanks, Sheraton. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Darcy. I am one of the practice managers in the commercial construction team. As Sheraton said, I recently rejoined after a year away at another set. And before that, I was here for just shy of 3 years, sitting mainly in the public law team. So I've clerked 2 areas of law now and thoroughly enjoyed both, but I think I found my feet in commercial and construction. So in terms of pupillage, and something that Chambers, I think, does really well, and is probably quite rare in the larger sets in London, is that we get all of the pupils in their second six to practice. So as Dan and Rachel and Jake touched on earlier, this means that you get to go to court usually once or twice a week, which amounts to around 20 to 30 times over the 6-month period. So this has a real advantage, as you get to go out to different courts, mainly county courts, and we do try to keep these within the M25, so you aren't travelling too far. By doing so, it allows pupils to interact with judges, ushers, opponents and clients, to build those good relationships that you will of course need as you move on to becoming a full-time tenant. Some of these will also be, of course, remote. These will be via Microsoft Teams and Zooms. These hearings do need to be navigated slightly differently. So it's a great way to practice that before, again, you hopefully get offered tenancy. So these hearings will be small and simple, such as small claims, trips, slips, road traffic accidents, MOJ stage 3s and COP section 21A matters. We also offer exposure to small contract disputes from the commercial construction team and planning enforcement cases from the PEP team. The clerks will liaise with your pupil supervisors quite closely to ensure that you have sufficient time to balance caseload and preparation. Another great benefit of this scheme, which I don't think anyone's mentioned, is that any fees you earn in your second six, you get to keep in addition to your pupillage award, which is great. Without Chambers contribution, I think, as well. I think that's right. Obviously, this could sound daunting, being, going straight on your feet in your second six, but beforehand, we ensure that you have the correct training informally and formally. So I think it's been touched on again already, but we offer training courses, so like mock trials in-house, which senior, junior and junior members will provide. And we also buddy you up with someone in the clerk's room and a junior member of Chambers, so they're on hand for those sort of more informal questions that you may have. In my opinion, and I'm sure everyone will agree, that a key to pupillage and tenancy is building a really good relationship with the practice management team, so we can understand what you want out of your career. So continue throughout communication, coming in to see us, letting your presence be known in the clerk's room. I'm now going to pass over to Sheraton, and she's going to speak on early years. Thank you.
Thanks, Darcy. Okay, so you've now been taken on as a tenant. Well done. All that hard work has clearly paid off. The mentoring support that we've been discussing will continue. The buddy that you had been allocated will recently have been through those early years stages, which you're now encountering. So they'll offer you lots of support and guidance throughout the time if needed. As Darcy was touching on, you'll continue to be instructed on the matters that you've already been doing during your second six. But now as a tenant, what will change is that you will have a much wider range of opportunities to become involved in and experience the full breadth of practice areas that we cover here at 39. So some of the sort of opportunities that will come your way, junior tenants will often be called upon to consider taking on a mini secondment. The length of that secondment will vary, but it's usually 1 or 2 days a week. And we as clerks wholeheartedly encourage these opportunities. They're excellent for the junior bar to get to know clients, how they work, how their sector works, and gather knowledge of that particular area. And of course, start that all important relationship building with the clients, which you progress throughout your career at the bar. I've recently had a conversation with a junior barrister who is 2014 call. So next year we'll be coming into 10 years of practice. And because they wanted to develop on their energy side of things, we've come up with the idea of them to have a mini secondment 1 day a week for 3 months at Ofgem. So it's something that we use throughout the bar, not just something that we start from the beginning. But from your perspective, the sort of opportunities that we could bring your way, local authorities, we've got loads of local authorities that we work with in Chambers. So that from that perspective, you would be covering a range of public, commercial and planning side of issues. As we have a big regulatory team in Chambers, we work with lots of different regulators. So we're often asked to assist them with, ad hoc opportunities that they may need. We have regular arrangements with the Financial Ombudsman Service. I think that started in 2013 and that's still continuing. As I just mentioned, Ofgem as well is an opportunity. The Electoral Commission draw on us from time to time as well. And the Bank of England is just to name a few. As was pointed out earlier, we've got overseas offices as well. So we don't just have domestic opportunities on the secondment front. We can also offer overseas opportunities as well. Pre-COVID, we did have a 6-month rolling secondment in place in Singapore, which will be explored again. And I know that there's also discussions in the Middle East at the moment to set up further opportunities, which of course is excellent. Another highlight of coming to 39 in those early years is the chance to work with some of the most preeminent silk and senior juniors at the bar. So you're getting exposure to be involved in high profile, interesting, important cases that we have in Chambers and the clients that come along with that as well. We currently have a lot of public inquiry work in Chambers and are very proud to have lead counsel to both Grenfell Tower and infected blood inquiry. Although we're coming to the tail end of those inquiries at the moment, we use large teams in Chambers. And now, of course, we now have the COVID inquiry on the horizon. And again, we have lead counsel for central government departments, trade unions and charities, that's just to name a few. So we will be continuing to build in teams in Chambers for these instructions. We also have currently 25 members on the Government Legal Department panel, which is the Attorneys General panel. You can't apply to be on the C panel until you're 3 years experience, cool. But in the early years, you can join the junior scheme. So members of Chambers can then bring you into their particular cases once you're part of that scheme, and the clerks facilitate all of that for you. GLD can also call the clerks and say, have you got anybody on the junior scheme who can assist with disclosure tasks or drafting pleadings in a range of different areas. We will also sit down with you as clerks and have practice review meetings, ideally every 6 months, to look at how things are going, areas you wish to develop, general aspirations, and anything we can help with, any concerns that you may have. As Darcy highlighted a moment ago, communication is absolutely key between us all to take you forward in your career at the bar. So regularly coming into the clerk's room means we're constantly engaging in dialogue and we can see how things are getting on with you. 39 also puts on a huge seminar programme across the core practice groups, which has been set out earlier. We host those upstairs in Chambers, and the juniors are actively encouraged to attend these talks. And then we follow on with drinks where you get the chance to mingle with clients and members. The last few years have, of course, been very different, and we offered a diverse webinar programme during that time to huge acclaim that the clients absolutely loved. There is, of course, a huge benefit of that continuing, which we will continue to do so. But we also know that clients are now super keen to come in, see us in person. They miss that interaction with the speakers and also the chance to mingle with those practicing the same field thereafter. When we're looking for those speakers, juniors are also included and given the opportunity to speak or give assistance on writing papers. To get the credit for doing so, that gives you something to add to your Chambers online website profile, which of course must be kept updated at all times. As we are such a large set of Chambers, it really is important, and Chambers culture, to make sure that we socialise as much as possible. We have Chambers lunch in term time every Thursday, where members of Chambers very kindly pay for lunch for everyone. So we get a chance to catch up then. And we have Chambers drinks at 5 o'clock every Friday, whether it's term time or not, in the clerk space. So there's another opportunity to catch up at the end of the week. I don't think there's much more for me to add, just to sort of highlight that we do fully appreciate how daunting the pupillage experience can be for many. But as we've set out already, we really are here at 39 excellent at supporting you at all levels. The clerking team's massive, the supports team is massive, and it really is a nurturing environment for all. Don't think there's anything else to add, but Darcy can correct me if I'm wrong on that front.
We say it's a nurturing environment, and yet I think it is quite a daunting environment to walk into, you know. So when you first join, that's why we try and do all that stuff in the year before. Exactly. And we try and make sure that, you know, we're a welcoming place, that the clerk's room is a welcoming place for everyone. I think the drinks trolley certainly helps. But yeah, no, thank you both very much. Darcy, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, nothing to add. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the opportunity, just to say that the opportunities abroad, we don't do pupillages abroad. So the opportunities to go and work in, you know, do secondments and work abroad come up after you've been taken on as a tenant, as a junior member. I think, David, you did a 6-month secondment in Singapore, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. So I was there 2017 through to February 2018. So during the end of my first year of tenancy here, and had a great time, obviously, in Singapore. Delicious food, fantastic weather, generally, unless it's raining. No, it was a really good opportunity in terms of getting exposure to both international work and also very high-end commercial work. large arbitrations and that kind of thing. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it seems a wonderful thing to do right now when it's been raining constantly for 4 solid days here. And anyway, thank you both very much, Sheraton and Darcy. And we're going to just move on then. Do keep remembering to give us the questions. We're answering them as we go along, or they will be answered in the slots that they come up in. But now we've got Alex and Chris, and they will introduce themselves, but they're going to talk about the actual practicalities of what it's like to work at 39, because we do ask all of our pupils to come in. So even through COVID, we asked our pupils to come in every day. We had a huge space. Everyone was able to be very safe. We made sure that all the regulations were followed, but we do ask our pupils to come in every day. So what is it like when you come in here? I don't know who's going to go first. Alex and Chris.
I'll go first if it's okay, Chris. I'll just briefly go on my route to the bar. So I joined Chambers, like Sheraton, over 20 years ago now. I came from a very commercial background, working in the City of London doing IT. Then I come to the weird, wonderful world of the bar. I've completed a recent degree supported by Chambers in management practice, which is specialised in all aspects of managing a barrister's chambers, which I learned quite a bit from myself, which was very useful. One interesting fact about me, I'm a roof thatcher as well. So not only do I work in IT and fix buildings, but I can also put straw on roofs, which is quite a nice little pastime, which I still do for about a week a year sometimes. So moving on to the building itself. So I'm the operations and IT director. I oversee all the IT and look after the building to make sure from the moment you walk in the building to the moment you leave, everything should hopefully work as expected. We believe that a carefully, well thought out use of the latest secure technology will reap real benefits and is a great opportunity for all pupils. With this ethos in mind, we provide pupils with all the equipment that a barrister would have with full tenancy. So we have a full on-site IT and ops team. There's 4 people in the team. We all try and help where we can. So you can always approach me as well as the pupils do now regularly to ask any questions. Should you get tenancy, the same team will support you in helping you to buy any equipment that you may require in tenancy. Pupils are taken through the relevant policies and Chambers and given full guidance on secure working. We try and encourage paperless working, so the pupils from the first day of the setup have all the equipment, the iPhones, laptops, and the correct desk to ensure they can work in that way. You don't need to buy any equipment; it's all supplied for you. The laptops have a full docking station, so you can use them as a laptop, as Celia and Ella and Dan are using now. They can take them around to different rooms, or they can have a correct desk set up so they're not working scrunched up in a corner, which is really useful to make sure that sort of the HSE, DSE guidelines are all followed. During the setup in Chambers, so COVID changed things a little bit. All pupils were able to work remotely with their iPhones. So the setup in Chambers was replicated, so pupils didn't feel left out by if barristers were to work in Chambers. So they have the flexibility to work where they want to and how they want to, but within the sort of the 9 till 6 hours, which are stipulated. The online resources which pupils have in Chambers, all pupils have access to LexisNexis, Lawtel, Westlaw, Practical Law, and these are identical to the full tenants. They also have access to the Lex Diary system, which is our CRM system, which looks after fees, diary, and all the different movements of barristers and staff in Chambers. This system is regularly used when if you gain tenancy, so it's very important that pupils are familiar with how to use these at the time. We also have online resources. In 2020, just before the pandemic hit, we rolled out Citrix ShareFile across Chambers. This system has revolutionised how we can work paperlessly. Some people still like to work with paper, but we're very proud as a Chambers to say we've reduced our printing to 1/6 of what it used to be, which was a huge achievement. We're still trying to encourage people to work paper light or paperlessly, whatever you prefer. And this is a target we continue to try and to achieve.
Barristers by their nature have been very heavy users of paper, as you can see from the room I borrowed today, lots of files, but we're getting better and better and better. And COVID, again, another silver lining of COVID, really, wasn't it, Alex, that we were able to stop doing that. So environmentally friendly, GDPR compliant, you know, a much tidier and cleaner, you know, so it's a win-win all round, really, isn't it? Less to carry to court, it's better for your posture.
And it's really, really helped. It's helped in many ways. So moving on from IT to the wonderful building we have, in 2015, Chambers used to have 4 annexes and 1 main building. We were spread across, we were just getting larger and larger. So we moved to this amazing new building, 81 Chancery Lane. It has been quite a game changer. It's the various DDA improvements that it's brought to us, and just the sort of collegial way we can all work together now, rather than being spread out amongst many buildings. Even with COVID and less people coming to the office, it's still quite a regularly used building, and it offers us so many things. So we've got solar panels, we're very efficient, energy efficient building, great client sharing space. We have a games room with quite competitive table tennis competitions. I have to admit, I'm not very good at table tennis, but if you do ever benefit from joining one of those competitions, they can get fairly feisty.
I think Jake is. Jake, aren't you one of the table tennis demons?
Well, I'm staying a bit quiet. Harry, one of our clerks, beat me 21-3, I think, yesterday.
Wow.
So when I say I'm staying quiet, I've just told everyone. But yeah, I may have retired.
Harry's superb at table tennis. And down in the same room, we have a sofa area, we have Wii consoles, it's just a nice place to relax, really. We've got excellent technology throughout Chambers, excellent Wi-Fi. I don't think we've had many or ever complaints about Wi-Fi. It's heavily relied upon. During the pandemic, people were coming into Chambers to use the Wi-Fi, which is a really nice sort of thing that people could trust that to work. We have a discounted membership for the gymnasium downstairs, which is an excellent feature. We have 24-hour security on site, lockers available for pupils. As I've mentioned earlier, we have the on-site ops night team, which are always here to help. Lots of coffee machines, and this is a real necessity for all barristers and staff. We have a vast array of different coffee that you can have. We also have, within the building downstairs, we have 2 coffee shops, so they must know their market. We have 11 multimedia conference rooms, all with TVs, webcams. I think Shaman was using one earlier. They're fantastic to use. Really try and make them very easy to use. We also have secure on-site storage for your bikes, and very nice shower facilities with fresh towels every day, which apparently was one of the best things we've ever done, having fresh towels. Who would have thought that? I'm not sure what else we can mention for the building, but please ask any Q&As, and I'll pass over to Chris now.
Thanks, Alex.
That was very comprehensive, Alex. Thank you very much. I think Jake's in one of our con rooms as well.
Good.
So I'm Chris. I'm practice manager and ADR clerk on the commercial construction team. I am also clerk for Pupillage, and also Chambers mental health first aider on the staff team. So I'll be talking about wellbeing and work-life balance as something that 39 Essex is really committed to promoting and making sure that it is a safe space to be, safe space to work. As Lindsay touched on, it can be a daunting place to come into. It's a big building, it's a lot of members, and we want to make that as easy as possible alongside the pressures that you're going to have in any event when starting pupillage. Every pupil will come in, and as touched on by other people earlier, they will be assigned a buddy for the duration of their pupillage. They will keep in regular contact with you, make sure that you are doing okay. If you need any support, any questions, they are there to help you. And the clerk's room is also a safe space, so I'm always available, Lindsay as well, to speak to should there be any concerns during the course of pupillage. In addition to that, we have a variety of policies which are there to help support you during pupillage, and these range from an equality and diversity and inclusion policy to wellbeing, harassment, and reasonable adjustment policies. All of these are in the pupillage handbook, and they are gone through with you with the Chief Operating Officer upon starting pupillage. The culture and values at 39, really, we want to promote support first and foremost, that you are able to perform to the best of your ability, and we are not going to try and overwork you during pupillage. So there's a very strict 9 to 6 working day, and pupil supervisors do enforce that as best they can. There will be times that doesn't happen because that's the nature of the job, but if that is happening on a regular basis, that then becomes a problem, and we do look to sort that out to make sure that, especially during pupillage, you maintain that balance in your life. Managers in the classroom as well are trained on mental health awareness and ED&I, so everyone has a base understanding, so they are there to support as well. So if myself or Lindsay is not available, the other senior managers in the classroom are there to help. And at the beginning of pupillage and towards at the end of the second sixth, there is a detailed training schedule to make sure you are ready and comfortable with the work you'll be undertaking. The setup of the building at 81 Chancery Lane, where we moved to, allows for full disabled access. We have automatic doors throughout, 3 lifts, so rooms are spacious. There's enough space to get in and out, and there's no restrictions. And then in terms of the work-life balance, we do promote an ethos of enjoying yourselves together, from staff and junior members mixing, including the pupils. So making the most of that room downstairs. There's usually a junior tenant and pupils and staff drinks early on in pupillage as well, if we can. And then informal lunches, drinks throughout the year. Touched on earlier as well with the Chambers lunches, which happen on a regular basis. And it's just a good chance to get together and get to know the people you're working with and your supervisors and other members of Chambers that you might not see that often.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. Really helpful. One of the questions has been on how we're able to support people with disabilities if they're applying. And one of the things I would say is, please let us know. We ask you, before you come in for interview, if you have any kind of disability and if you need any adjustments made, just get in touch with us, communicate with us, and then we can make sure that we have any adjustments in place that you need and make the interview, flexible for you. So just do get in touch with us in advance, and then we work with people, ongoing to meet all of the adjustments that we can and that they need, depending on their disability. If somebody needs to be doing, if part of that is flexible working, then we are, that is one of the adjustments that we make. So in answer to your question. One of the other questions was, do we do pupillages in Manchester? No, we only offer pupillages in London. So there are opportunities to travel both domestically and internationally after pupillage as a junior member and live in those places, but not pupillage is only in London. At the moment, let's watch this space, so it might change, but at the moment we only offer pupillages in London. So going to the very important question of what are our 39 Essex Chambers pupils supervisors looking for from their pupils, which is obviously important to know when you're filling in the application form. We have Colin and Emily, and Colin and Emily, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. If you can just tell us who you are, what you do, areas that you work in, and how you got to the bar, that would be really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, so I'm Emily Formby. I'm going to go first. Colin will introduce himself in a second. We had a few notes, and then I've written all the way around the edge of the piece of paper. You can probably see, trying to answer everyone's questions anyway. So I probably won't answer half the things that I'm meant to be doing. My route to the bar, I did a history degree, and then I worked for a couple of years, not in law, I was public relations first of all, then I taught English for a bit, then I worked as an outdoor clerk for solicitors, I worked as a receptionist, blah, 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 blah. And after a while, I came to the bar, did my law conversion and did my pupillage at 39 Essex, but didn't get taken on. So then I know exactly what that feels like for anybody that happens to, got rejected, and went to what was then Hardwick building for 16 years, and then came back here, having finally persuaded them it was my spiritual home. It is our spiritual home, and have been here since 2010. And unless I'm kicked out again, have no intention to go anywhere else. I've been a pupil supervisor for more than 20 years now. Every year I've had pupils, which I love doing. That's probably my bit of teaching background. Interesting fact about me, I applied to be a cleaner in St Paul's Cathedral when I was a student and got turned down, not once but twice. How humiliating is that? Mind you, if you could see my hoovering skills, they were probably quite right. So a little bit about us. Also, I'm highly amused with Lindsay asking our junior tenants if they can remember their first case in court. I remember my first case in court back in March the 3rd, 1994. It was a possession action in High Barnet. And in those days, you had to be fully robed. I made the rookie error of going to the magistrate's court. And then had to get a bus because Barnet is not very well served with public transport, had to get a bus from the magistrate to the civil court, by which time I was in such a state that I put my robes on the bus so that I wouldn't be late. And it was me and a load of pensioners, and they all clapped me when I got off and wished me luck. That was my first experience in court. And of course, I was so early, I don't think the court doors even opened when I arrived, but there we are.
Did you win?
Well, it was a possession action with nobody against me. I mean, you had to stand up and say, use your order, please, I think. And, you know, yes, I think it'd be fair to say I won. Anyway, so that we never forget our first. And I think the really important bit about that is, however senior people may be, however serious they may seem, however unbelievably huge their cases may be, they've all been pupils. Absolutely all of us have been where you are now. We've all applied, we've all suffered that agony. And we have all had our first day in court. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, because it really does mean that everyone knows what it feels like and everyone does want to support you, because our main aim is we spend much time selecting wonderful people to be our pupils, and we want you to succeed. And so the really important part of being a supervisor is to encourage and nurture all you wonderful people that have put so much effort into your training so far. And we want to help you, nudge you over the last line and encourage you to blossom as practitioners in a brilliant job that we hope you will love for many years in the future. And that really, I think, is the sort of essence of what we try to do. We're committed to ensuring that you have the best chance and the best opportunity and the best training we think we can give you. Every year we reflect upon what has happened, and just as you've heard from the junior tenants and the current pupils about their experiences, we also reflect on those experiences to see what we can improve upon year on year. And you are not in competition with each other as pupils here. As Daniel was saying about the WhatsApp group and meeting up and having drinks and fellowship both before and during pupillage, that is because our pupils are members of our team. They are not in competition with each other. Our best outcome is for all of our pupils to stay with us until they retire as or go to the bench or whatever it is what very old barristers might do, but you know, to basically live your entire career here as practitioners, best friends with each other, and moving through. One of the questions asked, interestingly, was that our current pupils have all come straight through the academic route. Oddly, that's really unusual for us. It's really unusual for the practitioners as a whole. We have very diverse backgrounds. I mean, mine, as I said, I worked for a couple of years in fairly boring ways. We have people that have worked in really fascinating other long-term careers in publishing, in academic publishing. We've had people working on the Radio 4, media, actors,
musicians,
guitarists, yeah, exactly, thanks Kate, and soldiers, and you name it, we've had it. So although it is right to say this lot have come straight through, which is also completely fine and wonderful.
I don't think David did. David, what did you do?
No, David didn't, but our current pupils, they were saying they'd all come straight through from the academics.
What did you do, David? Because it was really interesting.
So I worked in investment banking for 5 years, which actually...
Maybe not so interesting.
No, I was going to say, I chose the only profession which would make me less popular at parties as a result to move into afterwards.
But I mean, yeah, a lot of people have worked in other ways. Our current pupils haven't, but that's not a requirement. Chris, I think, has spoken already quite a lot about the work-life balance, and that is really important for us. we want pupils to learn from the start how to practice and have a life, to keep a life and to thrive in every meaning of that word. And so we try to, when we still have some degree of control, instill some good manners and some good practices. What I find amusing is if it's 6:05, people regularly be at my door saying to whoever is my current pupil, why haven't you gone home yet? Why on earth have you not gone home yet? You should have gone home by now. Because all of us take on board that the importance of that, and more thoroughly that it is vital that you can keep going for the long haul, as Daniel was saying. It is a marathon, not a sprint. It is a job for life, and we do encourage and quite strongly adhere to that work-life balance. You've heard about the programme of education. We take a lot of pride in teaching our pupils as they go. There are opportunities to work for lots of different people, but we hope in a way that is structured and not overwhelming. Always your supervisor will be there to help and manage your workload as a pupil. And indeed, long afterwards, I still get phone calls from pupils who have been my pupils many, many years ago, and so my current pupils will attest, not often a day that goes by without someone wandering in and asking for a quick bit of advice and help. Pupils are for life, not just for Christmas, is I think probably our motto. And so and indeed, in fact, two of my supervisors are still in Chambers, and I'm not averse to going and asking them for a quick bit of help when need be. So it is a relationship that we take seriously and we hope helps you. So what should you be doing? What do we expect? We do expect you to make mistakes. It's a learning curve. We don't expect you to walk in on day one as the polished article. Of course, you'll have done lots of studying and lots of training, but you haven't actually done the job. So don't worry about making mistakes. The aim is to learn from them, and that's the point of the feedback. I mean, Ella and Sheila were telling you about the feedback that we give as we go along on each piece of work. And indeed, if there's questions that arise later or you think about later, we can go back and go over it. The idea is to hone and practice and polish. So try and learn from those mistakes. I mean, it's perhaps not ideal to keep repeating the same one over and over again, but that is the aim of the game. So show that you've taken feedback on board. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And don't hide things. If you think it's going wrong, speak up and ask for help. And in fact, that's probably true for life. Don't hide things. The file that you kick under your desk is the one that will come back and bite you in years to come. So ask for help. That's what we're here for. We are aiming to communicate. And one of the things I really like about being a supervisor is when people turn around and say, why did you do that? And you're like, gosh, you know, that is quite a good question. I'm not quite sure why, but the process of stopping and thinking about it is a learning process for both me and I hope for them. So a bit of tenacity, attention to detail. I think probably every pupil discovers that the answer generally lies on page 463 of the 600-page bundle, when you were really hoping after page 50 you've got the answer. Attention to detail can never be overestimated, and that is something that you will learn, the rigor of our job. That's why people come to us. They come to you for high level involved advice, and that's where we have to learn to place our focus. We will also help you, as you've heard from both the clerks and all of the staff members, and indeed all the supervisors, on how to build relationships both within other members of Chambers and with other clients, both your lay clients and indeed with professional clients, and to help you use that initiative in problem solving. I've got some other bits written around the edge. Assessments. I think you were going to deal with that, Colin, on how we carry out our assessments. And I think that was all I was going to say. Oh yes, I really like Daniel describing our care policy as being kicked out at 6 p.m. in a nutshell. There we are. But I think those are the questions I had. Unless there's anything else, Lindsay, let me know if there's anything else you want me to cover. And over to you, Colin.
Thank you very much. Well, that was so comprehensive and authoritative that I'm tempted to do like a lazy judge and say, I agree, and finish right here. There's just a couple of things to say about the less broad and more, I suppose, mechanical aspects of pupillage. Before I do, I am, I suppose, a child of 39 Essex Chambers. I finished my education in Germany. I was then a pupil in this Chambers. I joined with Sheraton and with Alex, except for a brief sortie to do a stage at the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. I have been here ever since. And what I can say is that even though when I joined we were 30 odd, we're now 150 odd, it's been quite remarkable how the Chambers ethos, the support, the diversity, the idea that we're looking out for each other has stayed the same, and it's been very welcome. And it was particularly welcome during the pandemic period. So whirlwind tour just through the basics, and I've got 5 things to say on that. First of all, on the start, as Alex says, there is an induction program. That has become more necessary as we have become both a larger set of chambers and now housed in one chambers with all the facilities that involves. When Emily says we don't expect you to be perfect, but to learn, probably applies nowhere more than on the logistical aspect. Don't be afraid to ask. We realize that there's quite a lot to take in. We accommodate that. That said, it's quite a good idea to get into some good habits right from the beginning. And one of those, and if you take nothing else from this, in terms of your pupillage, this is the most important. Regularly make a point of going into the clerk's room. Build that relationship from the start. You'll be surprised how much you learn and how much you benefit from that. We will give you feedback on a regular basis. And again, in terms of the start, that is a process that should start really from day one. 2 purposes. 1, to give you an idea of where you are, and 2, to give you the most opportunity and the longest opportunity to learn and to look at those aspects where we can tell you there's a bit of attention needed. And just so I've covered the question, in terms of the criteria and how we assess this, we're looking for set qualities, we're looking for intellectual ability, we're looking for expressive ability, we're looking for interpersonal skills, we're looking for commitment and interest in chambers. All of those aspects, we will give you feedback. We'll also give you feedback on the individual points. But again, the emphasis at the beginning is for you to pick up the points. These are aspects where I could be putting additional emphasis on, where I could be improving. And then as Chambers pupillage goes on, we're going to be looking then more at the assessment side to make sure that we have given you what you need to show us your best foot at the completion, your best foot forward. You've joined. Second aspect is how do you get into the good habits? How do you get those easy wins in your first weeks? This really shouldn't need saying, but it is such an easy one to get right if you can. Where possible, give yourself sufficient time to come in. Be there on time if you can, and if not, let us know beforehand. Have your equipment. You'd be surprised how often you will be grateful that you have a set of pens, your IT equipment set up. Be ready to go at 9 o'clock when pupillage starts. Be prepared for moments when you do need to ask questions, and be prepared to make mistakes. We all do, and also then be prepared not to lose faith when those mistakes happen. I can give you one example. My favorite pupillage moment, my high point, was when I was asked to fetch a case, in quite a high profile case for my pupil master. Dashed off, came back proud with it. I'd got the correct name of the case, but it was the wrong case. The expression on my pupil master's face means I hope I never have to play him at poker. But it was one of those occasions where, of course, you're forgiven if you do this once. The emphasis there is that you learn from it. You take the point on board. Then thirdly, you've got through those first few weeks. You have put yourself into the position of being in a bit of routine. What happens next? First, don't be afraid still to ask questions, but be minded to ask them at the appropriate time. In the midst of your pupil master's closing is probably not going to tug the gown, ask for a question or have input. Similarly, there will be times, particularly in the first weeks, where you are tired, where energy and enthusiasm may be starting to flag. We understand that. There are 2 things that I'm looking for, and that is, 1, try and manage your social life, your extracurricular activities, to give you yourself the best chance of staying awake in court, of taking on board those additional points. you'll be surprised how much more you will get out of your days in chambers if you arrive fresh and ready to go. And the second aspect of that is that one of the things where you can really give pleasure to your pupil masters is if you show them that the points that have previously been raised are taken on board. Remember when you had teachers? If you remembered something that they taught, you were able to produce it. What an impression that left. Pupil masters are not dissimilar. We fully accept that you will find your own style, you'll find your own way of doing things. Humor us at this stage. Show us that you can take the points on board, that you can do it our way. And then once you have processed through the pupillage stage, of course, you will find your own way of doing things. That just leaves the two broader points. The first one is one where I can't really add anything to Daniel and Emily in terms of the important support potentially of your fellow pupils. Do remember also that the bar is quite a small place. We tend to meet each other all the time. Your fellow pupils, the chances are, will be colleagues as you go through barristerial life. Do see them as a support in that way. And also do remember that we're assessing you. So if you can show interpersonal skills, not just with your with clients, not just with fellow barristers, but also that you can show that you're supportive and collegiate amongst each other, that again will stand you in very good stead. Last point, and perhaps the most important one, is what sort of pupils, what sort of person are we looking for? And there, the advice I think I've given before is be yourself. One of the key things, one of the key strengths of the bar is diversity. And one of the key ways that you can make sure that you become the best barrister you can be is not to pretend to be something you're not, but actually bring the qualities, bring yourself, your own experience, your own strengths, your own spin to the job. That gives you the best chance of persuading others, the best chance to do a good job. But also in terms of us as a profession, it's never been more important that we accommodate barristers in all shapes and sizes. I believe we're particularly well placed to do that at 39 Essex Chambers, given the breadth of disciplines and given the size of chambers. But remember, it's you we're looking for, and it's the strengths and the particular qualities that you can bring to the bar. And that is, thankfully, not a one-size-fits-all exercise. Now, I hope I've dealt with the questions as I went along. Is there anything else?
I just had two things that I hadn't picked up on. One, we had a question about a medical law practitioner, which is what I am. So just very quickly in answer to that question, I do almost exclusively personal injury and clinical negligence. I always have. The reason I got into that area of practice is in my 2 years of working and thinking what I wanted to do, one of the things I thought I wanted to do was be a doctor, but I realized quite quickly I didn't actually want to kind of touch sick people and have things oozing on my feet, and realized that actually the sort of abstract sort of medicine was what I really, really liked. So I actually came to the bar wanting to do, also taught was the thing that I understood, doing PI and clinical negligence. I work for both claimant and defendant, about 60-40, 50-50 pretty much. I also do quite a lot of inquests in various shapes and forms, and Court of Protection obviously comes into it with vulnerable people, but predominantly through that realm. Lots of kind of catastrophic injuries. Basically, the more senior you become, just the kind of nastier the things are that happen to people is pretty much what I would say. I'm happy to talk about that more, but I think that's probably enough given the broad areas we're trying to cover. And then the second thing was there was a question about extracurricular activities on the application form. And that's slightly difficult to answer. I mean, we certainly don't expect people to rush off and learn the violin and get grade 8 before they apply to us and they've got something really good to put down. Really, hopefully the skills and the skill sets that we're being looked for are pretty clearly set out in the Gateway application, and there's lots of information on the Gateway and on the website about how and what we're looking for. What we're really looking to do is to see what you have done in terms of the criteria that we assess by, which are obviously the intellectual capacity, your ability to express yourself, and your engagement in those processes. And as you say, we have a wide range of people that have come straight through school and university and come straight to us And we have people that have worked for 10, 15, 20 years before they've done that. And again, in terms of extracurricular, that often depends on the kind of opportunities and things you've had, but we're really looking for people that have got a zest and a bit of vavavoom about them, rather than any sort of specific number of hobbies or things set out. So hopefully that answers those questions. I'm sorry we've overrun our time. Thank you.
That's okay. It was very interesting, but I am going to go straight to David and Kate and Jake, and so just go for it.
Okay, great. I think it's me. So I'm Kate Grange. My route to the bar was I went to an inner city state school, did law at university, then bar school, and I was a pupil in 39 between 1998 and 1999, so quite a long time ago now, and was lucky enough to get taken on here. My interesting fact was going to be that I'm a bit of a bore and I like cold water swimming. But after Emily's anecdote about her first hearing, I thought I would share that in one of my first hearings, it wasn't the first, I went to the wrong court, went to the Crown Court rather than the County Court. And I was in such a panic, I managed to actually go outside the court and flag down a police officer in his police car and persuade him that he should take me to the county court because my case is so important.
Good advocacy, Kate. Good advocacy.
And he took me to the county court. So I had a ride in a police car and I arrived at court.
Did you get sirens?
No sirens, but he was a very nice guy and I was very grateful. And I can't remember whether I won the case. Anyway, we're going to talk to you about how to apply, myself, David and Jake. And I'm going to start with the process and what we're looking for. We're part of the Gateway scheme.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt really and just say, don't feel that you've got to rush this, guys, because actually we've answered most of the questions as we've gone along. So unless we're going to get a deluge more questions, you can keep going till, 5 o'clock, 5:05.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. So in terms of the process, we're part of the Gateway scheme. So it'll be, we'll be looking at your application on paper to start with, and then we'll have first round interviews and then second round interviews where we do a shorter shortlist. We get it down to around 15 to 18 people by the second round. And in terms of the process, I think it's worth explaining the criteria we apply in a little bit more detail. Emily just touched on the criteria, but these are the key criteria. So it's intellectual ability, whether you can incorporate the legal knowledge, skills and attributes to show that you can meet the relevant competencies to be a barrister. So obviously you've got to try and show off in your form or your intellectual prowess. And that will be obviously looking primarily at your grades and your degree results if you've done that, but also just the way you write your form and the way you speak and the way you analyse the questions that we've asked in the form. That then links to expressive ability, both written and oral. Obviously at the paper application stage, we're looking more at the written advocacy, and at the interview, more at the oral advocacy. So again, we're looking at whether or not you've got the expressive skills and abilities to be a barrister. Interpersonal skills. I hope it's come across from this webinar. I certainly have felt it just being here and listening to everyone else, that we really put a big store by interpersonal skills. We want people who aren't just brain box lawyers and who can cite a lot of black letter law. We want people who can really engage with clients and really communicate to a court, because actually so much of this job is about communication and good communication and empathetic communication. So although it's hard on a paper application, try and think about how you can show that you do have good interpersonal skills and that that's something that you've worked at or had the ability to practice over time. Obviously it's easier to show that in the interview section, but do think about your interpersonal skills and your experiences when you're filling out the paper application. Commitment, resilience and efficiency is the next criteria. We're looking for people that have the the skills, but have demonstrated a proven ability to commit themselves to something and work hard and dedicate themselves to something. It's hard being a barrister. None of us pretend otherwise. It requires a lot of application and dedication, a lot of hard work. And so what we're looking for is, have you got that commitment? Have you got that resilience? Don't worry if you haven't thought you wanted to be a barrister since the year dot. And don't worry if you haven't got, mooting prizes coming out of your, ears and whatever. You can demonstrate all these competencies through other skills and other experiences, not just in terms of the law. So, if you've been really committed to a summer job and you've done that job really diligently and you've advanced your interpersonal skills, whether you're a lifeguard or you've worked at Sainsbury's, that doesn't matter. We'd like to hear about it, because we think that that can tell us something about your own commitment and resilience. And then we've got efficiency in there. That often comes in, particularly when you start in pupillage. Can you get work done within a reasonable time, and can you commit to deadlines? Because obviously that's an important part of the job. And then the final key criteria is interest in one or more areas of law in which Chambers specialises. Hopefully it's quite easy when you apply to us, because we do a broad range of practice areas, and lots of them are really, really interesting. All of them are interesting in their own way. So what we want there is for you to actually demonstrate that you understand the areas of law we do, and that you're really interested. It can be interested in one area or a number of areas, but do some research, actually find out a bit about the cases we do, who we are, and try and demonstrate on the form that you've understood what we do and you're really interested in it. So overall, what we're looking for, I'm going to pass on to David in a minute about how to apply and what should be in your application in a bit more detail. But overall, we're looking for enthusiastic individuals, people who are kind of the well-rounded lawyers, who are interested in a number of different areas or that we practice in, or areas that we practice in, who are interested in our chambers, and also who can demonstrate that they can be succinct and precise in the way that they put their form together. So, David, shall I pass on to you now?
Thanks very much.
The next section.
So I'm David Hopkins. I have been at 39 Essex since 2015 when I joined as a pupil, and I have a fairly broad practice. I do a mixture of commercial law, regulatory law, disciplinary law, such as the Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal, and also public law. And my background before that, as I mentioned, I was in banking for 5 years and then had enough. And I'd previously studied PPE and did a master's in economics, and then went on to study law part-time and do the BPC part-time. I'm going to tell you hopefully a bit about how to apply and what should be in your application. And I hope I'm not going over any ground that's already been covered, but as you probably all know, all chambers must advertise their pupillages on the Pupillage Gateway, but not all will accept applications via the Gateway. Most do accept their applications, and 39 Essex is one of those. The Gateway's already open, has been open for about a week, and it will close on Wednesday, the 8th of February at 1 minute to midday. I'd obviously recommend you probably try to get your applications done by Tuesday, 7th of February, rather than leaving it up to the 1 minute before midday on the deadline. And generally, again, as you probably most of you know, you'll be applying for pupillage now, which would start in approximately 18 months from now, in September 2024. Just very briefly, for those chambers that don't take applications via the Gateway, they will have a process which will be bespoke to them. So I recommend looking on each of those chambers' websites if you're interested in any of those. So once you have made your account on the Gateway, Pupillage Gateway, you'll see for the chambers which are recruiting via Gateway, each of them has its own application form. That application form is mostly set centrally, but each chambers gets to set its own bespoke questions. So when you open up one of those application forms, you'll see there's some nice easy ones to start. Name, mobile number, email address and so on, I'm afraid that's not getting you most of the marks, which will get you through to interview. It then moves on to employment and work experience history and your educational background, as you might expect. As mentioned, I think in one of the questions, there's also an area for additional skills, hobbies, interests, and so on. And then following that was extenuating circumstances. As I say, then you move on now to the really, really important part, which is bespoke questions for each chambers. That's your real chance to stand out and impress. And finally, there are sections for equal opportunities monitoring and summary questions. So what you all want to know, and hopefully I'm not giving away anything I'm not allowed to give away, how would you stand out in the bespoke questions? What do you do to make sure that your application is one which will impress the barrister who's reading it, or and make sure you get through to the first round interview and hopefully beyond and secure that pupillage? So as I say, those bespoke questions are the ones you really want to concentrate on. And especially since you can't actually, they're the ones you have most control over. You can't actually change your education, your work history and so on between now and the deadline for when you have to get your application in. So these are the ones to really concentrate on. I'll give as an example, unless anyone tells me I'm not allowed, but given that you could go on the Gateway and have a look at it, it must be in the public domain. Our questions this year for bespoke questions are: first, why do you believe you'll make a good barrister? Second, why do you want to join our chambers? Third, what areas of practice are you interested in and why? And then finally, in no more than 100 words, explain the COVID pandemic. Now that last one sounds pretty tricky to me, but I'm sure we'll see some good answers on our applications this year. So I'm going to give my tips in terms of filling out the form and answering these questions and making sure you're impressing whoever's reading it and standing out. First of all, key, I think, is remember you're trying to impress a barrister who will probably be reading it. There'll be barristers in whichever chambers you're applying to who sit on the recruitment panel and go through the forms and mark them. So you want to impress a barrister. How do you do that? You show them some evidence. Every time you fill out one of these questions and you say, I'm going to make a good barrister because I'm excellent at speaking and I've got great intellectual ability, you just move on without having provided any evidence of why that's the case. Someone reading it probably will think, well, everyone can say that, can't they? So I would tend to think each time you say something about yourself which you want to persuade the reader of the form is true and why they should give you a pupillage, give an example. So my expressive ability has been honed over the many meeting competitions I've done. Now that's not particularly great, but you understand what I mean in terms of an example. I've been meeting for 2 years. I've represented 3 applicants in the Social Security Tribunal with FRU, or whatever it is that you've done, and what means you can show to prove effectively that you are what you say you are. As well as showing the evidence, you also want to make your form clear and easily readable. Now, there's 2 parts of that. One is, as is always good advice, write in short, clear sentences. Don't think you have to use massively long words or convoluted sentences. Barristers do often end up doing that, but that's usually because they haven't had enough time to edit down and make their submissions better. So try as hard as you can to use those nice, short, clear sentences, easily understandable. Not just that though, also make use of paragraph breaks, numbered lists and so on. There might be a point where you want to say, for example, I am interested in 3 areas of law, say at 39 Essex Chambers. I would recommend break that up into, once you've said I'm interested in 3 areas of law, new line, number 1, full stop, whatever area of law, public law. Explain why you're interested in it, obviously provide evidence, as I was saying previously, why you're interested in public law. Then make sure you've got paragraph breaks again, number 2, and so on. The reason I say that's so important is, for starters, remembering that people are busy and they have lots of applications to look through. If you write all of your words in one great big block of text, you might be saying things which are fantastic and actually someone should read and think you're brilliant, but they won't stand out as much as the person who's made it all nice and neat and easy to read. Because as you flip through all of those applications, the nice, easy to read one will stand out and you think, oh, great, someone who's made it nice and easy for me to read. And possibly that's just preying on a little bit of unconscious bias from them, and you get a bit of a halo effect around your form because you've made it so nice and easy for them. But that's part of persuasion on paper, is making your document attractive and easy to understand. Finally,
David, I'm just going to interrupt you there because there's been a couple of questions that have come in about it. And so there, one of the questions is, keep it succinct, keep it clear. When's it appropriate to use bullet points?
I would say any time that you want to give a list. So I have to confess, I don't, because I did my Pupillage Gateway form 10 years ago now, it was plain text. So I did use numbered lists, but I would simply write bracket 1, close bracket, etc. I don't know whether you can do any sort of word style formatting, bulleted list or whatever, but I would say.
Lelia, can you? Lelia is our expert on all things gateway. Thank you very much.
We've got the new gateway at the moment. So on the TribePad platform, which is all very new this year, which everyone will notice if they've already done an application last year. So I can't answer that with full confidence, but it looks very word based. So judging from what I have already seen and the tests I've already done, it is it's a lot more easily readable. So. Yes.
And I'm being reliably informed by the people listening, thank you very much. See, attention to detail, that it's a 500-word limit and not a 100-word limit on the COVID question, on the Pupillage Gateway.
Is that 500 character rather than 500 words, I think is what one of the questions
is.
It is, yes.
That's correct.
There you go, Lelia.
This is a really good reason not to use too long words. So keep everything to 4-letter words, and you can get a few more words out of that one. So yeah, it's a very short limit, isn't it? So you want to hone that over and over, I think, would be a tip from me. And that plays into, finally, I was going to say, if you can, get someone else to read your form. I know you'll have heard that before, but mistakes stand out. They stand out to other people. You might proofread your own form 3-4 times, and there'll just be some silly mistake that you don't spot because you've read it so many times. Just so if you can get someone else to look at it, do, and possibly return the favour to them. That's one way of persuading people to do that. The final point I was going to make was around the fact that you're in this slightly tricky position that you are applying to lots of chambers. All the chambers know that really, but they all want you to actually have them as your number one. You need to love bomb all the chambers, make it look as if they're your number one in every single case. So do make sure you tailor your form. So don't simply use the same copy paste for every single chambers. It will be obvious when people have done that. And we accept, of course, secretly, we accept that perhaps we're not everyone's number one, but we expect to be number one for at least 95%, I'm sure. But we know, of course, you're applying to multiple chambers, but do show why you are specifically interested in us. And obviously that goes, but show it to the other chambers too, why you're specifically interested in them. It will really help you stand out.
Every chambers wants to feel like it's number one, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Just quickly, I saw there was a question which I thought I could take on the STAR method. The question was, in using the STAR method, should you label the headings, e.g. situation, task, and so on? I would say no. STAR is effectively a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, an assessment method for chambers. Not all chambers use it. I don't think we expressly use it, but it is a way of assessing whether someone's shown.
Oh, we've lost you, David. We can see your voice, your mouth moving, but we can't hear you. Oh, you're back again.
Okay, yeah, it's an assessment method, as I say, to show that people do have the evidence to prove that they have the competence that's being assessed. But I wouldn't use it as a way of formatting your application. Chambers that are using that method will pick it out from what you've written anyway. But it might be a helpful way of reminding yourself, have I ticked it off each time? So maybe think about it privately, but don't use it as headings. That's essentially how I'd approach that.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. And you're just using up space as well. Jake, we're going to go to you.
Hi, everyone, again. I am just going to touch upon my personal experience of interviews here, and also just say a few words about mini pupillage here. You heard my journey, or some of my journey earlier, but I thought I'd just say a couple more bits about it. So I went to a state school in South London so I'm fresh from a Christmas of being ribbed for losing my South London accent. I then did history at university. I then did work for a while at a think tank before deciding to come to the bar. So I'm a good example of someone who's done something before coming to the bar. And then I did the GDL and got pupillage during that. Did pupillage, and then, as I said, I went to be a JA. My interesting fact is that I live on a houseboat. Members of Chambers are probably a bit bored of me proselytizing about boat living, but as I always tell them, I'm developing my advocacy skills. So there we go. So yeah, moving on to my personal experience of interviews. The first thing I'd say is that, of course, everyone's nervous when they turn up for an interview, and there's no getting around the fact that interviews are scary. But what I would really say is that my experience of 39 interviews is that the atmosphere was not made to be intimidating. In fact, it was kind of completely the opposite of the way that the panelists approached that. And I felt that the panelists really wanted to get to know me as a person. So I think to kind of re-emphasize some points that have been picked up earlier, I remember, having something on my form about searching London for the best fish and chip shop, and that ended up being a major topic of discussion and debate. So I suppose that a point to take from that as well is that we are interested in you as a sort of as a rounded person, not just in your kind of academic brilliance, although I'm sure you do all have that as well. And I think that comes from remembering that the people interviewing you are looking for what they hope will be a colleague for many years. So they want someone that they're going to get on with and be able to work with. So we do 2 interviews, both with panels of 3. The interviewees, in my experience, were drawn across Chambers, different levels of seniority. In the first round, I hope this is still the same, but someone can interrupt and tell me if it's not. You sort of get a legal problem, not kind of legal in the sense that you need to know loads of law. So I applied during the GDL, and I was only a few months in, so it's not something that you need to have lots of background knowledge about. And it's a kind of discussion about how you think about this. So I think mine was something around vicarious liability, and you have a discussion with the panel, and then you get some sort of more general questions about your motivations, why you want to come to Chambers, was my experience. And then the second round was my experience was reading a case and then being asked some questions about that case, and then again questions about where my interests were and why Chambers, and as I say, quite a lot about London's best fish and chip shop. Do feel free to email me separately if you're interested. So that's my sort of experience of interviews. I will just say a few words about mini pupillage here. I see we've had a few questions about that. The first point to make is that it's not necessary to have done a mini pupillage with us in order to get pupillage. There's quite a number of junior tenants who haven't done a mini pupillage who have got pupillage. So don't let that put you off applying. Similarly, if you didn't get a mini pupillage with us after applying for one, that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be able to do well on the pupillage process. For anyone who is thinking about not necessarily pupillage applications this year, because it's be a bit tight to get a mini pupillage in before that, but do keep an eye on our website. Our new pupillage application, a mini pupillage application window will open in the summer or early autumn, and all the details will be there. We do 2-day mini pupillages, that can be remote or that can be in person. It's really up to you. But you'll sit with the supervisor and we'll give you, you'll shadow them with some of their work and hopefully a hearing or a conference. And then you will do an assessed piece of work, which does get taken into consideration at the pupillage, deciding whether to give someone a first round interview. So that's the sort of second day of the mini pupillage. But as I say, all of this information is up on the website on our mini pupillage page. So you'll find everything there, and do keep an eye out for when our next mini pupillage season's coming up. I think I've covered everything. Someone want to tell me I've got something wrong or missed something?
I think that was very thorough, Jake. Thank you very much indeed. It was it was really good. I would say, to all interviews, whatever it is that you're doing, just prepare, be confident, be yourself, remain calm and professional. Don't rush your answers. Have in mind some common questions. Talk to yourself before, get there early. Be calm and enjoy the process if you can. So I would say common things that I say to everybody when they're being interviewed for anything, but true nevertheless. Now we've got a few questions that we just need to sweep up, but actually not very many. Anybody see some of the questions that needed to be swept up?
Yeah, I was gonna jump in about Oxbridge. We interviewed lots and lots of people, and we have lots of pupils and members of Chambers who didn't go to Oxbridge, so you shouldn't worry if you don't have an Oxbridge degree. That's clear.
Another question that we had, which I was going to ask Sheraton, but I think she's had to go and pick up her little girl, was around, there's been a couple of people ask about what our split is on, or whether we do claimant and defendant work in public law. We do both claimant and defendant work in public law. So we do obviously have a big GLD panel, that's the government legal department. So we have a number of barristers on that, but we also do a lot of claimant work. What the actual split is, I don't think I could tell you, but unless anyone here can do better than that, and it would vary year to year in any rate, but we do a lot of claimant work. I'd imagine overall it's probably about 50-50, but I don't know.
The other point I'd make to pick up on the chat, Lindsay, is we don't look at old applications. So if people have applied before and not got anywhere, that shouldn't deter you. We have had, I'm not going to name them, but we've had people who have applied and not got pupillage and then applied again, and indeed applied again and got it on the third or fourth time. So there'll be probably different people assessing your application to the time before. And
when we sift, you're just a number. So,
exactly.
We don't keep any records.
And just adding to that as well, there was a question about, is it worth applying if you haven't had an assessed mini pupillage? Yes, it absolutely is. We take a fraction of people for mini pupillage who apply, and as you've already heard how that may or may not feed into your application, but we absolutely don't see that as a rejection of us for pupillage.
We don't have a tax lawyer on the panel at the moment. I apologise. And I think therefore we've answered all the questions except Lelia. Lelia, are you going to answer something about characters and words and
Yes, I just want to jump on the back of what David was saying about when you're filling in your application form. So somebody had asked about the personal summary section. Any section that isn't set by us, as far as I understand it, is set in terms of word limits by the Gateway. So we have no control over that side of things. However, we have set our characters as the answers. Now, the first 3 questions are a standard across the board kind of amount that most chambers will select. The question where we've asked for 100 words, we've given 500 characters. Now that includes punctuation, spaces, So all special characters, things like that. So that is even more of an incentive for you to practice brevity in your answers. But you know you'll get it right. The other ones have, I believe, 1,200 characters, not words, characters. So do be aware of that when you are filling them in, that you will hit a wall, and that will be more of a reason for you to get it just right.
And characters takes precedence over words.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. There you go. Gosh, I'm glad I'm not filling it in. Okay, right. Does anybody have anything else that they wanted to add?
Oh, well, I noticed there was a question about pro bono. I don't know if that got answered, or even if the person who asked it is still on the Zoom. But just to say, lots of people in Chambers do pro bono. There's lots of different types of pro bono you can do. Advocate is the bar pro bono unit's new name. They will email you every Wednesday, and I've just seen the email come through with a list of cases that you can sign up to. I'm feeling guilty, but it's also January, so therefore I'm going to probably sign up to do one because I haven't done one in a bit. If you are a chancery or commercial or other similar type lawyer, you can also do a scheme called CLIPS, which is the Chancery Litigant in Person scheme. I've done that a few times. That's a really good scheme where you go to court and the applications court in the Rolls building, and you help out a litigant in person who's acting pro bono. Sorry, you act pro bono for a litigant in person and assist them with their application to tell a very quick story of someone else who is a tax lawyer but sadly isn't here. So it would have been even more perfect had Kelly been here. She could have told the story as well as given some tax law information. She once did the CLIP scheme, and her client, the litigant in person, was seeking an injunction to prevent her mother being cremated the same day. And she succeeded because she made the argument that there would be irreversible damage were the injunction not made. Quite clearly, she was right to make that submission and successfully got that injunction. So you get to do all sorts of interesting different cases. The one I stands out to me was I managed to resist an injunction against my client to prevent her from using £50,000 to buy a chip shop. And I've subsequently looked on Google Maps. We successfully resisted that injunction, and I've looked on Google Maps on Google Street View, and I can see the chip shop down in Kent, and she's renamed it. So obviously that all went very well. So
what would be interesting is to know whether it's on Jake's list of the best fish and chip shops.
This is all the way down in Romney Marshes, so I don't know whether Jake's list extends that far.
Well, but, David, I'd love to invite you on a trip.
Absolutely.
on his boat. Okay, well, that is brilliant. Thank you all very much indeed. So I'm thanking all you attendees for attending and sticking with it. I hope it was useful. I would be, if there's anything that you think we should really have covered that we didn't, or vice versa, then do drop me a line. If there's any questions that you really need a burning answer to and you haven't had, then drop me a line. You know where to find me. My email is on the website. I do have a quick sort of apology to make on behalf of our website. For the mini pupillage one is completely up to date, but I have noticed that there are a few things that we need to update on our pupillage website, and that will be being done very, very quickly. But it's slightly out of date, still very useful, but slightly out of date. So thank you all. Can I just wish you huge amounts of good luck? Hopefully we'll see you at interview at 39. And I hope we have answered all your questions. Good luck with filling in the application form, whether it's this year or next year. And finally, thank you very, very much to all the people that came on, today to the webinar and gave all your time. So thank you all very, very much indeed. Take care. Bye-bye.